the thing at the foot of my bed. I've never liked sleeping in silence. Silence has a way of revealing things you don't want to hear. Your heartbeat, the settling of the house, the way your breath seems too loud when you're trying not to think about anything. But that night, even the usual safe noises felt wrong. Too sharp, too isolated, as if everything around me was holding its breath. I lay on my side, staring at the thin line of orange light slipping through the blinds. The glow pulsed slightly each time a car passed outside, like a heartbeat on the wall. I tried to match my breathing to it, tried to ease myself towards sleep. Then I heard it, a soft, wet inhale. Not mine. My breath hitched instantly. I froze, muscles locking so tightly it felt like my bones were about to crack. I strained my ears, telling myself it was just the wind against the window, or maybe a car outside, or anything else. But then came the exhale, slow, heavy, inside the room. I felt it before I fully heard it, a cold pressure at the edge of the mattress, the faint dip of weight, pushing down, not like a person sitting, but something crawling up from the floor, testing the bed frame. My stomach twisted. I didn't even dare swallow. The mattress moved again, just a whisper, but enough that I felt it travel up the blanket and into my legs. Something was shifting its weight at the foot of my bed. I pulled my feet up without thinking. The movement was tiny, but whatever was at the end of the bed responded instantly. The breathing paused. Then the smallest, quietest sound reached me. A finger, or something like it, traced along the blanket near my shin. I nearly gasped out loud. Every hair on my body stood up so violently it hurt. I could picture the shape perfectly even without seeing it. Long, cold fingers curled over the edge of the mattress, pulling something closer, lifting itself slowly, silently. And then, the worst part. A head rose from the darkness. At first, it was just a shape, too low, too still to be human. But as my eyes adjusted, I saw the suggestion of features. Not real features, more like impressions carved out of shadow. 2 round eyes, too glassy. A mouth slightly open, not in a scream or in pain, but in curiosity. It looked at me the same way a child looks at an insect it's about to pull the wings off. The cold air from its breathing spread across my legs, climbing all the way up to my chest. I forced myself not to move, not even blink. I don't know why. Maybe because some primal part of me understood exactly what would happen if I reacted. Then its head tilted. A long, slow tilt. Not sideways like a person. It moved like its neck was bending in ways it shouldn't, like it didn't quite understand how to mimic a human gesture. The whisper slid out of it. Awake! My entire body tensed so hard my hands cramped. The voice sounded dry, like leaves scraping together in winter. It took everything in me not to scream, to stay perfectly still, hoping it only responded to movement. But it didn't retreat. It crawled. The mattress groaned as it placed more weight onto it, inching toward me. Tiny vibrations traveled through the bed frame with each motion. I felt its cold breath on my thigh now, slow, hungry, steady. Then, without warning, the blanket tugged downward just an inch, enough to let the cold air slip under it. I snapped. I don't remember deciding to move. My body just reacted. I lunged upward, swinging myself toward the wall where the light switch was, practically throwing my whole weight against it. The light exploded across the room. I spun around. Nothing. The foot of the bed was empty. The air was still. There was no indentation on the sheets, no sign of anything at all. My mind scrambled, desperate for logic. Sleep paralysis, maybe, a nightmare bleeding into waking. But then I realized something. The blanket was still tugged down, a full hand's width, lower than when I had gone to bed. I stayed awake back against the wall, watching the room with wide, burning eyes. Every minute felt like an hour I waited for the sun, for any sign of the night ending. But right when the sky outside began to lighten, when I finally let my muscles relax, when my eyelids started to sink, something warm and wet brushed the side of my ear. The whisper was right there, almost touching my skin. Awake now. The night visitor. I don't know when the knocking started. I'd been lying in bed for what felt like hours, staring up at the ceiling, letting my thoughts drift in that half-sleep blur. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels thick, like sound itself is holding its breath. I remember adjusting my pillow, turning onto my side, and then I heard it. Knock. Soft, deliberate, right against my bedroom window. I froze immediately. My mind tried to reason with it. Maybe a branch tapping the glass, maybe an animal. But I knew the sound of my own window too well. This wasn't random. This was someone knocking to be let in. I stayed perfectly still. After a few seconds, it came again. Knock, knock. Slower this time. As if whoever, or whatever, was out there knew I was awake now. My heart thudded so hard it felt like it was shaking the mattress. I tried not to breathe too loudly, hoping whoever was outside would think the room was empty and leave. For a moment, the knocking stopped, but the quiet was worse. I kept staring at the curtains, expecting a shadow to move behind them, some shape to pass over the faint sliver of streetlight seeping in. But nothing happened. Minutes dragged by, and right when I started convincing myself it was just my imagination, the window slid open. Just an inch, just enough for the cold air to slip in. I heard the soft groan of the frame, the one it always makes when it's moved slowly, too slowly. Like someone was trying not to be noticed. I sat upright, breath caught in my throat. I wanted to run, but the idea of moving, even a little, felt dangerous, like it would draw attention. Something scraped along the windowsill, fingernails, long ones. I saw them before I saw the hand, thin, pale fingers curling over the bottom of the window, gripping it like someone outside was pulling themselves up. The nails were too long, too sharp, tapping lightly against the wood as the hand tightened. Then a second hand. My mind screamed at my body to do something, anything, but fear pinned me down like a weight I could only watch as the hands pulled, as a head slowly rose into view behind the curtains. I didn't get a full look at its face, just the shape of it wrong, too narrow, as if someone had tried to stretch a human face into something else. Then it spoke. Not loud, not aggressive, just a whisper leaking into the room. I know you're awake. Every muscle in me locked at once. The voice was right next to the window, but it felt like it was whispered directly into my ear, like it somehow slid across the room without crossing the space. The hands pushed the window up another inch. My survival instinct finally kicked in. I lunged out of bed, slamming my palm against the light switch on the wall. The room erupted in brightness. The window was closed, locked, the curtains perfectly still, no hands, no face, no voice. My whole body shook, and I didn't sleep at all. Not even for a second, I just sat with my back against the wall, staring at the window until the sky brightened. When the sun finally rose, I let myself exhale, telling myself it had been some kind of half-dream, some night terror creeping into reality. I almost believed it. Until I saw them. 4 long scratch marks running down the window frame. Fresh, deep, and on the inside of the glass, written in a slow, fogged breath, "Don't turn the lights off tonight." The thing that waits for me to sleep. I used to fall asleep fast. I used to feel safe in my own house. Now, I'm scared to even blink too long. It all started with that first sound, the soft, hesitant creak of my bedroom door shifting in the dark. The kind of sound you only notice when everything else is dead silent. I remember lying there on my back, staring at the ceiling, trying to pretend I didn't hear it. But the house was too still, too cold, too aware. The door creaked again, just enough to make the shadows bend. I tried telling myself it was the usual nighttime nonsense, the walls settling, temperature changes, old hinges. But something deep down in my gut, something primal, knew it wasn't that. And then I heard it. The breathing. It didn't sound like someone standing outside my door. It sounded like someone pressed against it, their face almost flush with the wood, inhaling through thin, cracked lips. The breath rattled, like each inhale scraped the inside of its throat. Each exhale came out moist, sticky, almost trembling, like it was excited, like it was trying to hold its voice back. Then the whisper leaked through the crack at the bottom of the door. "Are you asleep yet?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to jump out of bed and run into the night. But my body didn't move. My limbs locked in place, and all I could do was stare at the ceiling, eyes wide, praying it couldn't see me. Minutes passed, hours. Eventually, the breathing faded, and right as dawn crept into the room, I finally passed out from exhaustion. That should have been the end. But the next night, right when I felt myself drifting off, the door creaked again. This time a little wider. I could see a thin strip of darkness spilling into my room. The breathing returned, louder, wet, dragging. I pulled my blanket to my chin and shut my eyes tight, hoping it thought I was asleep. It whispered again, same words, same voice. "Are you asleep yet?" It sounded closer, just beyond the doorframe. I didn't open my eyes, not even when the floorboards in the hall groaned under some shifting weight. By the third night, it didn't bother pretending to hide its presence. The door opened halfway. I woke up to see it, a tall, thin silhouette standing in the hallway, unmoving. It didn't come in. It didn't speak. It just leaned its head slightly sideways, like it was studying me, trying to see if my eyelids were twitching. I kept still for hours. On the 5th night, my door was already open when I woke. I know I locked it before bed. I always lock it. But it was open so far that the shadow in the hallway stretched across the floor and touched the foot of my bed. It whispered then. Not at the door, not from the hallway, but from right beside the bed. "You're close to sleeping, aren't you?" Its breath cooled my cheek. I held my breath until my lungs screamed. The next morning, I found long, thin prints on the floorboards, marks like fingers had dragged across the wood. By the 7th night, I could feel it inside the room. The darkness felt thicker, the air heavier. like the night itself was leaning over me. It didn't knock. It didn't whisper. It just stood in the corner of the room, barely visible in the dark, so still that only the rise and fall of its chest gave it away. I kept my eyes nearly closed, pretending to be asleep. Every few minutes I felt the mattress tremble, like it was slowly creeping closer. Around 3 a.m., it finally moved to my bedside. I felt the cold weight of a hand hover over my shoulder without touching me. Then the whisper returned, broken, trembling, eager. "I think you're awake." I stayed frozen. I didn't sleep. Not until sunrise. Tonight, it's different. Tonight, the house isn't making any noise. No settling wood, no heating pipes, nothing. Just a thick, steady silence that feels intentional. And just now, while I've been lying here, typing this in the dark, I heard something far worse than the whisper. The soft thump of something heavy placing a foot onto my bedroom floor. Not the hall. Inside the room. It's not breathing. It's not whispering. It's just standing there, somewhere in the dark, waiting for me to stop moving, waiting for my eyes to close, waiting for sleep to drag me down far enough that it thinks I won't resist. Because every night it gets braver. Every night it gets closer. And tonight, I can feel it leaning over the side of the bed, waiting for the moment my eyes finally close.